Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self-publishing and marketing your books. We'll share a bit of our own insights into the craft of writing, self-publishing, and marketing books, but we'll also interview established indie authors who will share their insights into self-publishing and promotion in today's market. I'm Shanon, writing under the pen name SC Huston, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
My name is Morgan Lee.
And I'm Ben Pick.
We are going to be talking in this first episode about our own publishing paths and how we came to those points. Let's start by doing intros for all three of us. Morgan, do you want to start by telling us all about yourself, your writing experiences, and what you write?
All right. So my name is Morgan. I am currently 31 years old and have been writing since I was 6 years old. I am a multi-genre author who likes to write in middle grade, young adult, and new adult fiction, with a sprinkle of nonfiction in there as well. Currently, I have one book published and am working on books 2 and 3 in that trilogy.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and move on to Ben. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you write and your writing experiences?
Thanks. I'm an aspiring author working on my debut novel, and I'm also editing the sequel and writing the sequel to that. So it's been a lot of fun combining everything together. I also am on AuthorTube as Running to Write, where I give writing advice and lessons learned through running metaphors.
Awesome. So a little bit then about myself. Morgan, I did not know, but I am exactly 10 years older than you. So I'm 41, although my birthday's next month. So then I'll go up another age. So for myself, I've been making up stories and writing since before I can remember. And at 9 years old, I remember telling my dad that I wanted to be a writer. And but during that time, self-publishing meant, selling books or printing your own books and then selling them out of the back of your trunk. So I was looking at the more traditional path then, but then I became a little more realistic as I became an adult and took on realistic jobs. I was in the military for 7 years, and then I worked for the Marine Corps as a civilian for a few years, and then I got my MFA and worked as a writing coach and as I was a college professor of English and literature. Until about 2 years ago, that's when I decided to put myself full-time into writing. And I'm a young adult fantasy author. My first book debuted November 1st, 2021. And so now, without breaking the bank too much and marketing the heck out of that book, my next release is actually in a couple days after this video goes live on January 3rd. So hopefully we'll learn all the secrets, tips, and tricks of writing and self-publishing from our guests that we can use for ourselves. But for today's episode, let's move into interviewing each other. And we're going to start with Ben. So what made you want to start writing?
I had a story that I wanted to tell, and I didn't start when I was 6, but I did start 2 decades ago. And that story combined together into a series of short stories, which ultimately formed the novel that I'm still working on. So it's been a long road, but I have come a long way and learned a lot from it.
Awesome. So who are some of your favorite authors?
Raymond Feist and Ursula Le Guin. There were definitely authors I loved before then, and certainly plenty afterwards, but those were some of the core stories and novels which gave me a real enjoyment from reading.
Great. So what does your typical writing life look like? Do you plan to write every day, or do you have like goals that you set for yourself?
It's inconsistent. I do absolutely have goals that I set for myself. I try to write as much as I can every day if possible. The days are rarely the same, so wherever I can carve out time, I will write. Usually that means it's after I walk my dog and before dinner. During summer weekends, it'll be after a long run. Once I cool off, I'll try and sit down and write for a few hours. During winter, it's the exact opposite, where I will write for a few hours and then go for a run once the weather warms up a little bit. And I'll aim for 2,000 to 4,000 words on those weekend days and maybe 500 words during the week.
Great. So what are some key challenges when it comes to writing for you?
Time and confidence. I often have a crystalline image of a scene or a moment or a character interaction that I want to get down on paper, and I feel like I often fall short. Now, I'll get there eventually with the revisions, but that is a very time-consuming process.
I think we're all there as far as not as whether or not we agree, think that what we are writing on the paper meets the vision that's in our heads. So So what comes first for you, your story, the plot, or the character?
I tend to have a plot, so I will have either a specific scene or a moment that I want to build towards as the climax or the final resolution, and then I work backwards from there.
Interesting. So do you feel like you need a degree in order to be a writer?
I would say that it certainly helps. I don't necessarily think so, although my background, I have yet to use my college degree in my day job. So I'm kind of biased in this one, where everything I learned in school taught me how to learn. But I feel like a lot of the college courses, by the time, especially my industry, by the time something gets incorporated into a course, it's already out of date. And I know that the self-publishing industry changes very frequently, so it will be extremely difficult to teach that material or teach something worthwhile short of, the general fundamentals of writing.
So I kind of think that answers a little bit of my next question because of us, you're the one that's still trying to figure out your publishing path, or I think that you've probably settled, it sounds like, on self-publishing. But can you tell us a little bit what's gone into your thinking of trying to choose between self-publishing and traditionally publishing your work?
Oh yeah. I was aiming to publish my first novel by the end of this year. That obviously didn't happen. I'm sort of in editing purgatory where my manuscript is with a professional editor, and we've gone through several rounds of full manuscript edits, and I've overhauled it quite a few times in the past 6 months, but it's still a very, very slow process to get where I want the story to be. And I'm moving forward with the plan to eventually self-edit that, but I've also been inspired by Barrett Laurie's series on querying for agents. So I'm going to try that route for a little bit, and all of that material that I generate to query those agents, I'm going to then plan to use for if I don't get picked up, I will use all that material again for when I self-publish.
And to be clear, that's like you wanted to publish by the end of 2021, right? Because
Yes, end of
yeah,
2021. Sorry, this will
right.
be coming out at the start of 2022. Yeah.
Right, the very first day of 2022. Yep. So is that maybe a new plan for you then to maybe publish by the end of 2022, or do you have like a sooner
Yes.
timeline?
I would love to publish by the summer of 2022. We will see how close I can get to achieving that. So you can see in real time the choices and mistakes and people I interact with to help me along that path. So the people that we interview here.
Awesome. So that kind of goes into the next question of what are you doing right now to pursue the goal of publishing? So you mentioned you were going to try querying. So are you going to query the story that you're working on now that you want to publish next summer?
That's the plan. I'm also working on performing a lot of research. So I'm trying to figure out how to budget it, how to budget my time and financially get everything I need to get the book out at that time. So that includes cover art. I've already worked through the professional editor, who is going to be the most expensive part of the entire process. So that's already been front loaded, but there still are countless expenses aside from that, from marketing to how to start my own business so that I can fold any book I create underneath that. So there's a lot of different aspects that I'm looking into for how I need to publish that book and showcase it as best I can.
Yes, and there's definitely so much you have to do when you are self-publish your books. You wear a lot of hats. So right now, how much time do you dedicate to actual writing compared to like all those other things you're trying to do to work toward your publishing path?
About a third. So I will be writing new material for, say, 4 hours. That means I'll also be editing other material for about 4 hours. And then I'll also be researching, looking up, what I need to do for taxes, what I need to do to set up my own business, what I need to do for marketing, what I need to do for cover art, and every single step along the way.
Awesome. So who or what do you listen to or watch to stay like up to date in what's going on in the publishing world?
AuthorTube is a wonderful resource for that. And I hope you don't mind, but I'm also going to promote both of you. Shanon, I know I've mentioned the costs of publishing. I've absolutely used your site, your AuthorTube channel for that information. Morgan, I've also watched your videos as you've shared all the steps you went through with your own publishing journey. And the information in there is extremely valuable. There's also, I mentioned Barrett Laurie, Megan Aldridge, there are countless author tubes out there who have chronicled their journey and their pitfalls. And so I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I'm also in a few writing groups. One of the most helpful ones I have is this very small Discord channel. And whenever PitMag comes out or anything, any publisher is putting out a notice that they're looking for X genre, somebody will put that information in our Discord channel and we will work from there and try and get noticed or try and get picked up.
That sounds like a great community there.
Hmm?
Well,
Yeah,
thanks, Ben. I think that was our last question for you. So, but before we move on to Morgan, you want to please tell our listeners where they can find you?
Absolutely. I am available. I'm on AuthorTube as Running to Write. That's all one word with the number 2. I post videos every Monday night. And like you said, this is coming out in January 1st. I believe along with my upload schedule, I'll be starting a series on writing while also maintaining a full-time job. So hopefully you'll check it out. And thanks a lot.
Great. And I would highly suggest Ben's channel. I love how you've done the whole writing metaphor with, I've bragged about it to some people. I'm like, it's so cool how he does it. Each step, every mile, relates to something in the writing process. So that was really cool. I love following your channel.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, the first season was pretty easy to do that. It was structured based off a marathon, so it was 26 episodes.
Right.
Now I've sort of fallen off of that structure, but still incorporates a lot of running metaphors.
I've been wondering where you plan to go now that you got the marathon done. So maybe it's like sprints. But,
Yeah.
All right. So now for our first question for Morgan, what made you want to start writing?
I've been in love with writing since I was young. I think I was influenced by my teachers. She would always read to us a lot and give us little writing assignments to do. So I started pretty young with writing stories, and I would write them on notebook paper, draw pictures to them, and then hand them into my teacher. So I've been writing since I was little.
Was there a specific teacher that really inspired you? Anyone you can point to for
Yes,
writing?
definitely it was my first and second grade teacher, Miss Stroup and Miss Balkovec. Both of them kind of instilled the love of storytelling in me and always encouraged that part of me. I wasn't very talkative or outgoing or social with other kids, so that was just something that they could work with me on, I guess, or encourage me on to continue. And then I guess also my fourth grade teacher, it was that assignment that she gave that kind of started me writing longer stuff like novels. So,
And then along those same lines, who are your favorite authors that inspired you?
so I don't tend to have favorite authors. Um, but the story that inspired me was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So C.S. Lewis. And yeah, I mean, I don't tend to have favorite authors, and I've kind of been in a reading slump over the last couple of years, so I don't really have a great answer for this. But honestly, anything that I read tends to inspire me. But The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was one book that kind of sparked my desire to write novels.
So what does your typical writing life look like? Do you plan for a set period of time every day to write, or do you have like goals, like, weekly goals or yearly goals for your writing?
I'm more free form. I don't write every day. And when I am working on a story, I write better in long bursts. So I spend a lot of time on my book. Once I get into the zone or once I get started, it's really hard for me to stop. So I tend to focus a lot of time on the book all at once. Word count only exists for me during nano times. I really don't think that counting words is kind of beneficial for anything really. And I tend to write a lot of words, so I don't really have to worry about is this enough for a novel because I tend to overwrite anyway, so I don't really have to worry about that part of it.
What are some of the key challenges to writing?
Definitely ignoring the inner editor and perfectionist and not listening to the voice that says, "Oh, this sucks. This needs to be better." and just allowing yourself to write the bad draft and just get the story out. So turning off that part is the key challenge for me.
Oh boy, that inner editor it comes get me all the time.
Yeah.
So, what comes first for you when writing your story, plot or character?
It ultimately depends on the story. Sometimes a character will come to me almost fully formed, and it's like I'm just telling their story. I'm just writing it down. And then other times I'll get the plot first. Usually it'll come in the form of a title. So I like to think of titles. I think of a title first, and then a story will kind of craft itself around that title. And then I have to think of a character later to kind of fit into the story.
I always think that's interesting when people say they get their titles first because I think that's one of the hardest thing for me is figuring out the title.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too.
Do you think you need a degree in writing to be a writer?
I don't. Like like Ben said, I think it helps, but I don't think it's necessary. I have a degree in creative writing. Have a bachelor's degree, but I don't think that it's essential in order to like call yourself a writer. It kind of really depends on, are you taking the time to learn those skills? Are you practicing your skills? Are you doing what it takes in order to get better? And are you writing? Because if you're not writing, you're not technically a writer.
So, you have, I know, one book published. You've had a couple other ones in the past
Mhm.
that you've taken down, right? Is that am I? Do I know that? Do I have the right information there?
Yes.
Okay. So, the next question I have for you is tell me a little bit about your journey, or tell us a little bit about your journey to publishing your first book. So, I mean, pick whichever one that you want to talk about.
Okay. So it's definitely been a wild ride with me of publishing. So I'll talk a little bit about the books that I took down. I had two books up. One was the one I wrote in high school that was inspired by my fourth grade writing assignment. And then the other one was a science fiction novel that I put up in 2016. So it's kind of been a backwards journey for me. I started with self-publishing before I was on AuthorTube, before I learned anything about the self-publishing market at all. Originally, the plan was traditional, but then I decided to do self-publishing. So I did everything kind of backwards, and I just thought, like, I can just put a book up and it's gonna be a bestseller, it's gonna be great. And I didn't take the time to edit or even make the story better or anything like that. I just made a lot of wrong decisions. So for the book I have out now, Seed Among the Thorns, I kind of did the same thing, but I kind of got sick of myself for doing the same thing over and over again. So I left the book up there while I was revising it, while I was trying to find the cover designer and do all the right stuff. And I left it up there kind of as a motivator to me to do it the right way. Like, I didn't promote it or anything, but it was still there, so somebody could buy it if they wanted to. And I don't know, some kind of reverse psychology on myself to get it done and do it the right way. So, yeah, I just feel like the process of doing everything wrong the first time was kind of essential for me to figuring out how to do it correctly, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you have been doing self-publishing before, and you kind of hinted at traditional publishing. Would you consider going the traditional publishing route in the future?
Yes, most definitely. I've always wanted to be traditionally published since I was a kid because that was, the only option really that I knew about. Um, but now, yes, I still want to be traditionally published. I'll probably focus on publishing my middle grade books traditionally, and then maybe my young adults will all be self-published. I'm not really sure yet, but definitely I do want to be traditionally published.
So, since you were thinking about being traditionally published when you were a kid, what pushed you to self-publish the books when you did?
Mostly impatience and wanting to call myself an author and wanting to have a book in my hand. So that kind of feeling of like, it was almost like thinking that, oh, it would be instant gratification for me to just, oh, I could just self publish and not really considering all of the other stuff. Cause I just saw, like, oh, I can just upload my book to Amazon. That's great. And I didn't really see like everything that goes into self publishing.
Right, they make it super easy, just upload a book.
Yeah. And it's not that easy.
Was there anyone or anything in particular that inspired you to go the self-publishing route in the first place?
Definitely AuthorTube in general and finding the AuthorTube community. Um, Before then, I was just on BookTube and just like listening to people talk about books. But finding the AuthorTube community has definitely kind of inspired me to go the self publishing route. I believe the first person that I watched was Jenna Moresi, and she's had amazing success self publishing. So she's kind of an inspiration to me to um, continue on that path.
So now we get into like the nitty gritty. What surprised you about self-publishing?
I kind of already hinted at this, but everything that's involved, all of the hats you have to wear, all of the things you have to think about and consider, like cover design, like marketing, editing, all of the things that go into making a good book and a successful career as a self-published author. So it's a lot more than you think it is on the surface. And then all of the money that is actually involved with self-publishing, that's another thing that surprised me as well.
Along those lines, then, what's one misconception you had about self-publishing or that you've since resolved?
That it was simple and easy, and I don't want to say, well, that anyone could do it in a sense. Because when I tell most people, like, oh, I'm an author, I'm self published, they're like, oh, I could do that. Like, it's easy, it's fine. Like, that's nothing. And yeah, just that there's so much behind the scenes and so much work to be put in. And it's all gratifying work, but you still have to do the work in order to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, there is a misconception that it's easy just to upload your book, but yeah, you could upload your book and put it out there, but then no one's ever going to buy it, right? If they don't ever know that it exists. So, so I was actually curious about this because I feel I made a stumbling block when it came to doing a pre-order with my book. So I was wondering, did you do a pre-order with your book, and if so, what was experience like? And do you think it was successful to you?
My pre order was not successful. I only sold, I think, 5 copies, and that was to, like, family and friends. I'm trying to think if how I marketed my pre-order. I'm pretty sure I did the book trailer, which is the featured video on my channel, and I didn't do a blog tour with this book, but I did, like, Facebook ads and some other things, and really didn't see any kind of turnaround for any of that, so it was not successful. I would want to research a little bit more on pre-order before I do the next one, but yeah.
Well, you already answered how you've been marketing the book, but have you done any follow-up marketing? So maybe annually or along those lines?
Not much. I still have a lot to learn when it comes to marketing and best marketing practices. Facebook ads, Instagram ads are the ones that I've mainly used. With one of the books that was taken down, I did do a blog tour with that one, which I don't know how successful that one was. I did get some early reviews of the book, not very many, but I did get early reviews on that book. So in the future, I would want to do that again as far as book launch and art copies goes. So yeah, there's still a lot for me to learn in regards to marketing.
And I'm researching marketing all the time, and what works. It seems like best practices changes on the author and what they write and what the general feel of the public is at that moment. So I don't know if there's. I mean, I'm sure there's like wrong things to do, but what is the best practices? I think that's such an elusive idea, and I'm hoping we'll definitely find out some answers from some of the authors we bring on. So I know that you do some social media, but I don't know how much you get into it. Do you think it's valuable as an author, or why and why not?
A little bit of both. I think it is valuable, but it can be, I don't want to say a time waster or just like a time suck, or you can get too wrapped up in trying to do all of the social media that you're not spending enough time writing your book. Um, I don't particularly like social media. I don't like to create content all the time. YouTube, I really love, but things like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, not my jam. I don't really want to do it. So I kind of had to pick what I want to focus on. So YouTube, I'll maybe post some stuff on Instagram because I don't mind it, but I will not do Twitter. I hate Twitter. I will not really post on Facebook because the time that you if you don't want to put in the time to do it, then you're not going to see any return. Like if you don't enjoy it, I don't think you're going to see much return because it's going to be like grueling just to put stuff up on social media. But I do think it's valuable just to connect with readers and connect with writers. But yeah.
So those were a lot of social media sources that you don't use. Were there any that you had a positive experience with or that you would recommend other people using?
I just really like YouTube, if that counts as social media. But
Yes, it does.
okay. Because yes, YouTube is the one that I enjoy the most. It's where I spend the most of my time. I also spend a lot of time on TikTok, and I like TikTok, and I eventually want to create stuff on there as well. But it's just a thing of dividing and managing your time well. So you're not too wrapped up in trying to manage all of your social medias instead of writing.
Yes, definitely time management, which leads into the next question of how much time do you dedicate to other writing related things that's not writing?
I would say it's pretty much kind of half and half. I like to call myself a productive procrastinator. So if I
I
am
love that.
focused like on writing and I'm stuck or I'm having a block or something, I'm like, okay, let's research cover design. Let's figure out a marketing strategy I can do. So I will do things writing related rather than writing if I'm stuck or if the scene is giving me trouble or whatever like that. So I feel like I spend about equal time with writing and then writing related stuff.
As a last question, if you could pass one thing on to aspiring authors, what's the one self-publishing tip and trick that you would want to share?
I would say find what works for you. This is like my mantra of just life is to find what works for you because from personal experience, I have often compared myself in my process and my writing, my books, social media to other people and try to do everything because this is what this person is doing. So this must work or this must be the right way to do it. So my number one advice would be just to find what works for you in regards to marketing or self-publishing or whatever it is. You're unique and your process is going to be unique. So find what works for you.
Well, thanks, Morgan. I think you've answered all of our questions, but before we move on, please tell our listeners where they can find you and purchase your book.
All right. So I am pretty much on every social media platform, though I don't use all of them, as author Morgan Lee. My website is authormorganlee.com. So it has all of those links listed if you want to find me anywhere. And then my book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, ebook, paperback, and hardback. So you can find all of the links for that on my website.
Cool. Well, thanks, Morgan, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. And we're going to move on to Shannon. So, what made you want to start writing?
I can't recall like a moment in time that's like, yep, I want to start writing. I've always been telling stories, and I think from the moment I started reading, I started putting words down on paper, and I hand wrote everything from as early as I can remember.
That's awesome. I was also very big in handwriting everything. So, who are some of your favorite authors?
I've always loved Robert Jordan, Terry Brooks, and Jacqueline Carey. Recent favorite authors include Brian O'Sullivan, and currently I'm reading your book, which I'm loving. So.
What does your typical writing life look like? How do you have a specific set goal for word counts in terms of days, weeks, month?
So I would love a typical writing life. I like to have like set times, but it's a bit of a challenge. Right now, I'd say about half the week I can sit down for a couple hours in the morning and write. And Monday nights I always write, and Sunday or Saturdays write as well. But I have an 8-year-old, which comes with its own responsibilities. Like just this week coming up, all day Wednesday, I'm at his school for a winter party. So there goes any writing time. Um, and then he's also neurodivergent, which means lots of appointments and therapy.
What are some of the key challenges when it comes to writing for you?
Finding uninterrupted time. So I think I'm a little bit like you in this, Morgan. You say like you sit down and you can write a whole lot if you can sit down and get into your writing zone. And I think it's like more of like flow. And of course, I've heard about flow state recently. So I like getting into that flow state. But when I'm constantly being interrupted, like my son's teacher texted me twice this morning, took me right out of the flow state, what I'm trying to do. So, and trying to get back to writing is hard because you're like, okay, where was I at? What mindset was I in? So.
For you, what comes first when you're writing? Is it plot or character?
So I tend to think of a lot of story ideas first, which is kind of plot, although it's not very detailed. And then I start thinking about the characters that would inhabit those stories, and then they kind of dictate the plot from there.
Nice. So, do you think that you need a degree in writing in order to be a writer?
So I have a degree in, an MFA in creative writing, and absolutely do not think you have to have that degree to write. I didn't get the degree to be able to prove I was a writer. I've always known I was a writer. I felt that as a kid. But my degree did give me more, learning, a little more education, different ways of looking at things, especially, coming together with other writers and seeing their points of views. And that was really, it was very educational, but it also opened up doors for me to go into teaching, which I wanted to do.
That's really good. Now, earlier you mentioned that you had just recently published your debut novel. Would you like to walk us through some of that publishing process?
Sure. So when I decided to write in order to publish, I first looked at what it meant to write to market, and I ended up straying away from the market that I chose and writing a book that I actually really wanted to have. And I wrote that book during NaNoWriMo last year, 2 years ago now, 2020. And I made it at that point. I sat down and I made a timeline of, okay, this is when I'm going to publish my book, because I had it done. But I thought, okay, I have no online presence. I had no author platform. I thought of everything I needed to get done. I wrote down everything, and I put it into a spread Excel sheet, and I put due dates of when I needed to do everything before my book was actually published. And of course, that included other things like getting the book edited and getting a cover designer. Although I ended up with using my own cover. I also started a YouTube channel to promote my work, which I feel like morphed into teaching about writing. And then, of course, after my book's release, I'm doing exposés, I guess, on my book sales and marketing.
Did you or would you ever consider traditionally publishing? Why or why not?
So for a little while back in 2011, 2012, I thought about traditionally publishing. I submitted a story for a literary magazine, and it was published. And I thought, okay, I could do this. And so I actually sent out query letters for my book baby, my story that I've been developing since I was like 9 years old. I received lots of rejections and no response. So I decided from there I was not going to traditionally publish.
Well, Morgan, I'm going to kick it back to you then. Because Shannon, you just went ahead and answered my
I know.
question. No, don't feel bad.
I guess what I could say is that another part of me choosing to self-publish is that I like having full control over my work and deciding what my cover is going to look like and not having to change my story. Plus, I don't want to wait for someone else to decide if my work is worthy.
Fair enough.
Did anyone or anything inspire you to self-publish?
Oh, well, after getting, it was actually pretty quickly after I started getting my first rejections that I started coming across articles on the internet about self-publishing, because I guess self-publishing came in about what, I don't know, 2008 to 2010, somewhere in that time frame. It kind of started, and I saw the possibilities, and I thought, yep, I can do that too.
Was there anything in the self-publishing journey that surprised you about the process?
Oh yes, writing was the easy part. So I think when we first start off, when we're trying to write a book, we're like, oh, okay, how can I write a whole book? How can I get all these words down? But when it came to self-publishing, you have to get the writing done. That's the easy part. And then figuring out and learning about self-publishing and marketing your work, it was a steep learning curve.
I completely agree with that. So, to piggyback off of that question, what was one misconception you had about self publishing before you published your first book?
So I think when I went into, starting to self-publish, I knew that it was going to be some work. I knew I wasn't going to go, hit a home run with my first book. At least I didn't think that was going to be for me. That's very few people do that. I don't think I had too many misconceptions, except that I think I thought maybe I'd have more time to write. I guess I didn't realize how much self-publishing is. A part of that, it's a huge part of that is a business venture versus being a writer. And I knew I'd spend time on some of those things and educating myself, but I thought I'd have more time to write.
In terms of your pre-orders, do you think that was successful? Did that really help you sell your book, or is that something you would strongly recommend?
So I did a pre-order, but it was it was a misstep, but I didn't know it was a misstep. I was a bit naive. So I was a bit naive in thinking that um how my steps were going to fall out in my timeline. And I thought, okay, so this day I'm doing a cover reveal, and then I'll do my pre-order. And then I learned later that the two are supposed to be married together. So when you do your cover reveal, you're supposed to have a buy link come out at the same time. And so instead of changing my cover reveal, because I had already advertised, I was revealing my cover July 15th of 2021. I just thought, okay, well, I'll just start my pre-order. But what I found out later was that having such a long pre-order, because my book didn't come out until 1 November, it can actually mess with your Amazon rank and your sales ranking and how much promotion Amazon will give to your book. Now, there's nothing known for certain, but this is what I guess a lot of self-published authors would experience. They say, this is what we see. And so I realized, oh, okay, maybe having a long pre-order was not ideal. And so I don't think it was a good thing to do. I would not suggest, if it's your first book, do not do a pre-order, or if you do it a few days in advance. And the only reason I would say to do that is to open your book up for your reviewers. If you're able to get some reviewers to come on and start leaving reviews on your book.
That's really great advice. Thank you. So how do you market your books? What methods have you done for this first one?
So I've tried a lot of different things, and I know there's probably more out there. And I do detail a lot of this in my YouTube videos. But this does include soft marketing, which is through social media. I'm like you, Morgan. I really don't like social media. Really don't. So, but I did do a little bit for my book. I actually did promotions through book sites where the book appeared like on their websites or in their newsletters. And of course, I sent it out to my own newsletter, which I was built up from signups that I did on Story Origin and paid builders. And then I also did a blog book tour, which, like you, I didn't find was maybe all that useful. I got one review out of it. So, and then I also looked for a way to have my book reviewed and posted or talked about through free blogs, podcasts, and even surprisingly through YouTube videos, because by the time I appeared in YouTube videos for my book, I was looking at more in terms of just getting more into the AuthorTube community. So I was surprised that you actually get sales from that too. So that was a bit of marketing.
You mentioned that you were writing less than you hoped, and that was one of the surprising things. So how much time are you dedicating to writing versus all of the other aspects of publishing, editing, finding CPs, etc.?
So I think we've kind of gone up the scale here. I think you said you were like at 1/3, and Morgan said she was at 1/2. And I think my time dedicated to writing related but not writing is about 75%. So, but I am also, I wouldn't say I'm rapid releasing my books, because I think of rapid releasing is a little bit closer time together, but there's only 2 months in between all my books coming out. And then I had a lot of issues with getting the storyline correct for my second book. And so, yeah, so I'm like constantly like, okay, can I get my editor lined up? Can I get readers for this? What do I need to do for that? What kind of marketing do I need to do at the same time for my first book that just came out? So at this moment in my life, it's about 75% of my time dedicated to other writing related things.
So, with that in mind, if you can only pass off one piece of advice for an aspiring self-published author, what would you say?
I would say start on your author platform now. So things like a website and a newsletter, establishing an online presence, especially if you don't have one. I didn't have one before I started. And these things can be done before you're an actual author. I saw one aspiring author who has a website where she post updates to her writing, and she has like her timeline up there, say, this is when I would like to be published, and this is what I'm doing right now to work toward that. And and she's got a newsletter. You can sign up to her newsletter and get a free reader magnet, which is just a short story she wrote. And so she's getting people on her newsletter. So I wish I would have thought about all of that beforehand and did that 2 years ago when I decided to first start publishing.
Well, you finished up all of our questions, Shanon. Is there any, before we finish up, where can people find you and possibly purchase your book? We have yet to mention the title, so now's your chance.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even think that it mentioned the title. So Blood of the Lily is on sale, or available for sale. And actually it will be on sale in 2 days, but it is available on Amazon, and it's an ebook and in print. And Soul of a Rose comes out in 2 days, which at the time of this recording, it is not on pre-order, but it should be on pre-order at this time because I do plan on opening it up a couple days early for my reviewers. So, and Soul of a Rose is the second book. It is a trilogy. And the best place to find me is on YouTube under my author name, SD Huston. I have social media, but I don't check them regularly except for Instagram. I pretty much check that one every day, at least once. So, yeah, you guys can go out and pre-order a copy of Soul of the Rose or get Blood of the Lily here soon.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a lot of great information, and it was awesome getting to know you a little bit better.
Thank you. Well, do we have any other questions for each other? Should we wrap it up?
I think we're good to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks to our listeners out there. And we have our next show coming on January 15th. We'll be so pleased to interview Margaret Pignard, author of 5 books, who invites you to taste life twice. So if you have a question for our guest author, you're welcome to leave a voice message in the show notes on the podcast, leave a comment on the YouTube video, or on our Facebook group, Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.